Hollywood, 1975. The biggest movie star in the world opens his mail and finds a letter from a schoolteacher in Louisiana. A woman he has never met. A request he has no obligation to fulfill. And a decision that would cost him more than anyone could imagine. Most celebrities would have thrown it away. Their agents would have screened it out before it ever reached them. But Marlon Brando was not most celebrities. He read every word, and what he did next defied everything Hollywood stood for. It violated every rule of fame. It broke the sacred boundary between star and public. And it revealed something about Brando that the world had forgotten, something that made him dangerous to the system that created him. What happened in the weeks that followed stayed buried for decades. The teacher never spoke about it publicly. Brando never mentioned it in interviews. And Hollywood, which documented everything, somehow lost the records. Until a box of letters surfaced in an estate sale. Until someone finally asked the right questions. Here is the story. By 1975, Marlon Brando was a ghost haunting his own legend. The revolution he started in acting had been won and forgotten. Method acting was everywhere now, diluted into technique, stripped of its danger. The man who had terrified Hollywood with his raw sexual power in A Streetcar Named Desire, who had redefined masculinity in The Wild One, who had conquered every possible peak in The Godfather just 3 years earlier, that man was disappearing behind layers of weight, rage, and isolation. He lived on a private island now, Tetiaroa, in French Polynesia, as far from Hollywood as geography would allow. He gave almost no interviews, made almost no public appearances. When he did work, it was for money, nothing more. He would show up on set, do exactly what was required, collect his check, and vanish. The fire that once burned in him, that hunger to expose truth through performance, had been extinguished by something. By tragedies he refused to discuss, by betrayals that cut too deep, by a disillusionment so complete it transformed him from revolutionary to recluse. The public still knew his name, still recognized his face, though it had changed dramatically. But they did not know him. They knew the legend, the rebel, the genius. The man who had rejected his Academy Award to protest Hollywood's treatment of Native Americans, bold gestures, dramatic statements. But the person beneath, that remained hidden. Protected by distance, by silence, by carefully constructed walls. But something was about to crack those walls. Not a reporter, not a scandal, not another tragedy. A letter, handwritten, from a woman named Dorothy Strader, a third-grade teacher in a small Louisiana town where nothing ever happened, where Hollywood was something you watched on television, not something you touched, where the idea of writing to Marlon Brando seemed absurd, except that Dorothy Strader was desperate. She had a student, a boy, 8 years old, and something was deeply, terribly wrong. But here's what nobody knew. That letter should never have reached Brando. His mail was screened by multiple layers of staff. Publicists, agents, assistants whose entire job was to keep the world away from him. 10,000 pieces of fan mail arrived monthly. Requests, demands, pleas, love letters, threats, all filtered out, all discarded or answered by form letter. The system was designed to protect stars from the public, to maintain the illusion of accessibility while ensuring complete isolation. Somehow Dorothy Strader's letter broke through. And when Brando read it, something happened that Hollywood could not predict, could not control, and could not forgive. The boy's name was David, 8 years old, small for his age, quiet in a way that worried Dorothy. Not shy, not withdrawn, something else. Something that made her skin crawl when she looked in his eyes. Emptiness. Someone had reached inside this child and hollowed him out. He came to school hungry, wore the same clothes for days. Bruises appeared and disappeared, arms, legs, once across his face. The principal said to leave it alone. These were poor families. Hard lives. You did not interfere. You taught reading and arithmetic and sent them home. That was the job. But Dorothy could not leave it alone, because she saw something else. She saw a child who was dying from the inside out. Not from poverty, from something unspeakable. She tried talking to David. He would not speak about home. She tried talking to his mother. The woman was a shell, eyes empty as her son's. She tried social services. They came, looked around, saw nothing they could prosecute, and left. The system was not built to save children from what happened behind closed doors. It was built to document failure after the child was already destroyed. Dorothy became obsessed. She would lie awake at night thinking about David, about what was happening to him in the hours between when she sent him home and when he returned the next morning. She prayed. She cried. She felt utterly powerless against a horror she could identify but not name, could sense but not prove. And then she remembered something. An interview she had seen years earlier. Marlon Brando talking about his own childhood. His mother, an alcoholic. His father, a brutal, violent man. The abuse he endured. The emptiness it created. The way it had nearly destroyed him. He spoke about it differently than anyone else did. Not as a survivor telling a redemption story. As someone still bleeding from wounds that never healed. Raw, honest, terrifying in its nakedness. Dorothy thought if anyone would understand, if anyone would care, it would be him. Quick question. Have you ever felt completely powerless to help someone you knew was suffering, when every system, every authority, every rule said there was nothing you could do? When you had to watch someone drowning and were not allowed to reach out your hand? Let us know in the comments. So she wrote the letter. Longhand. Pouring everything into it, the desperation, the fear. The absolute certainty that this child was being destroyed and no one would stop it. She did not ask for money. She did not ask for fame or attention. She asked for something no one had ever asked a Hollywood star for. She asked him to visit, to meet David, to talk to this boy, one broken child to another, to show him that survival was possible. She had no idea if Brando would even see the letter, no idea if it would matter if he did. She mailed it and waited. Weeks passed. Nothing. She felt foolish. Of course nothing would happen. This was Marlon Brando. This was Hollywood. This was reality. Then, on a Tuesday morning in October, her phone rang. The voice on the other end was unmistakable. Deep, careful, every word weighted with thought. This is Marlon Brando. I received your letter about David. Tell me everything. 2 weeks later, Marlon Brando walked into Dorothy Strader's third-grade classroom in Louisiana. No cameras, no press, no entourage, just him. Wearing jeans and a simple shirt. Looking like someone's uncle, not the biggest movie star in the world. The children stared. Some recognized him. Most did not. To them, he was just a large, strange man standing in their doorway. Dorothy introduced him as a friend who had come to talk to the class. A visitor, nothing more. But when Brando's eyes found David, something passed between them. Recognition, not of faces, of wounds. Brando spent the morning with the class. He read to them, answered questions, told stories about making movies, but not the glamorous stories, the real ones, the mistakes, the fear, the times he failed. He spoke to them like they were people, not children to be patronized, and they listened with the intensity children reserve for adults who actually see them. But his attention kept returning to David. The boy sat in the back, silent, watching. Brando would ask the class questions and wait for David to answer. The boy never did, just watched with those empty eyes. And Brando watched back, waiting. To understand what happened in that classroom, you need to know what Brando carried with him, the things that made this letter impossible for him to ignore. His mother, Dodie, had been an alcoholic whose love was a distant, unreachable thing. His father, Marlon Sr., had been a violent bully who beat his sons and called it discipline. Brando grew up in Omaha, Nebraska, in a house where rage was the only constant, where affection was a weapon withdrawn at whim, where he learned early that the world was divided into predators and prey. Acting saved him, not because it made him famous, because it taught him to access the pain he carried and transform it into something else, something beautiful and terrible. Every character he played was an excavation of his own trauma. Stanley Kowalski's explosive violence, Terry Malloy's inarticulate hurt, Vito Corleone's quiet menace, all of it rooted in the frightened boy from Omaha who learned too early that love was conditional and cruelty was forever. He had spent his entire adult life trying to outrun that boy. Through fame, through women, through causes and rebellions and carefully constructed distance from anything that could hurt him. But you cannot outrun yourself. And when Dorothy Strader's letter arrived, describing a child trapped in the same hell Brando had barely escaped, The walls he had built crumbled. That afternoon, Brando asked Dorothy if he could speak to David privately. She hesitated. There were rules about this. Liability. But something in Brando's face stopped her objections. This was not a celebrity asking for special treatment. This was one survivor recognizing another. They sat outside on the playground. October in Louisiana. Warm. The sounds of other children playing in the distance. David sat on the swing, not swinging, just sitting. Brando sat on the ground beside him. For a long time, neither spoke. Then Brando said, "I know." Just that. 2 words. David's eyes flickered. "Know what?" "What happens at home, what you can't tell anyone, what you think makes you different from everyone else. I know." The boy's face remained expressionless, but his hands gripped the swing chains tighter. "You don't know nothing." "My father used to beat me," Brando said, not as confession, as fact, with his belt, sometimes his fists, sometimes for reasons, sometimes for nothing. I used to lie in bed at night and wish I was someone else, anyone else. I used to think there was something wrong with me, that I deserved it." David said nothing, but he was listening now, really listening. "It took me 40 years to understand something," Brando continued. "It wasn't my fault, none of it. The things that happened to me, the things that were done to me, they were not because I was bad or wrong or broken. They were because the people who were supposed to protect me were broken, and their brokenness spilled onto me. What would you have done in that moment? Comment below." Tears were running down David's face now, silent tears, the kind that come from somewhere so deep you did not know they existed. "I can't stop it," the boy whispered. "I've tried to be good. I've tried everything." "I know," Brando said again. "And I need you to hear this. It will not always be like this. You will grow up, you will get away, and you will have a choice. You can let what happened to you define you, destroy you, make you into the thing that hurt you, or you can take that pain and transform it into something else. Something that helps other people. I'm not saying it will be easy. It won't. I'm still fighting it, every day. But survival is possible." They sat there for over an hour, Brando talking, David listening, sometimes asking questions, sometimes just crying. And something shifted. Not healing, not salvation, but connection. The knowledge that he was not alone. That someone, somewhere, understood. That survival was real because here was proof, sitting beside him on the playground. Before Brando left, he gave David his private phone number, handwritten on a piece of paper. "You can call me," he said, "anytime, day or night. If it gets too bad, if you need to talk to someone who understands, I will answer." No Hollywood star did things like this. The liability alone was insane. The boundary violation, the potential for exploitation, manipulation, or worse. But Brando did not care about Hollywood's rules. He never had. And in that moment, he gave this broken child the one thing no one else could: witness, validation, truth. Brando returned to his island. David returned to his house. The world kept turning. But something had changed. Dorothy noticed it first. David started talking more in class. Started eating the lunches she brought him. Started looking at her when she spoke instead of through her. Not transformation, but the first fragile steps toward believing that survival might be possible. David called Brando twice that first year. Once in the middle of the night after something terrible happened. Once just to hear his voice. Brando talked to him both times, for as long as David needed. He never told anyone about it, never used it for publicity, never turned this child's suffering into a redemption narrative for his own image. Over the next 3 years, Brando stayed in touch with Dorothy. He sent money for David's family, anonymously, through channels that could not be traced. He arranged for better social services intervention, using connections he never admitted having. He did not save David. No one person could. But he gave the boy tools, resources, and most importantly, proof that the world contained people who cared, even when they had no reason to. But here's what makes this story almost impossible to believe. Brando never spoke about it publicly, not once. In an era when celebrities built entire careers on charitable gestures, when every good deed was photographed and publicized, Brando kept this completely private. The only reason we know about it is because Dorothy kept his letters. Because decades later, after both Brando and Dorothy had died, her estate sold her personal papers, and buried in boxes of lesson plans and student records were Brando's letters. Dozens of them. Asking about David, offering help, sharing his own struggles with depression, rage, and the ghosts of childhood trauma. Some people say Brando did this because he was trying to save himself by saving David. Others believe it was genuine compassion with no ulterior motive. What do you think? Let us know in the comments. The letters reveal something Hollywood spent decades trying to hide. Brando was not the monster the tabloids painted. Not the difficult, tyrannical actor who destroyed films with his ego. He was a deeply damaged man trying desperately to transform his pain into something that mattered, trying to use his fame, his resources, his survival, to help people the system had abandoned. He did it quietly, without cameras, without credit, because that was never the point. David grew up, survived. According to the limited records that exist, he left home at 16, got his GED, and disappeared into a normal life. We do not know if he ever saw Brando again. We do not know if he even remembers that afternoon on the playground. But for one moment in 1975, the biggest movie star in the world sat on the ground beside a broken child and said, "I know, and you are not alone." This story reveals everything Hollywood tried to bury about Marlon Brando. Not that he was perfect. He was not. He was difficult, destructive, often cruel to the people closest to him. But beneath the chaos was something else. A man who understood suffering with a clarity that terrified him. Who could not look away from pain, even when looking meant tearing open his own wounds. Modern celebrity is performance. Calculated charity. Strategic compassion designed to trend on social media. Every good deed is documented, publicized, turned into content. The idea of a major star traveling across the country to sit with an abused child, no cameras, no publicity, no benefit to their career, is almost unimaginable now. Not because modern celebrities are worse people, but because the system will not allow it. Because fame is a product now, and products must perform. Brando operated outside that system. He used his fame as a weapon against itself, rejecting Oscars, sending Native American activists to speak in his place. And in moments like this, using his resources to help people no one else would notice. He did it imperfectly. Sometimes his help caused more harm, sometimes his interventions were disastrous. But he tried. In a world of carefully managed images, he remained dangerously, messily human. The letters between Brando and Dorothy Stratter are housed now in a university archive. Researchers can read them, students can study them, but they remain largely unknown, because they do not fit the narrative. They complicate the image of Brando as purely destructive genius. They reveal something more complex, a man at war with himself, trying to use his damage to prevent damage in others. So here is the question for you. If you had the power, the resources, the platform to actually help someone, would you do it quietly with no recognition? Or is the validation, the credit, the public acknowledgement part of what makes helping worthwhile? Let us know in the comments. And let us know which untold Hollywood story we should cover next. The secret meeting between James Dean and Marlon Brando weeks before Dean's death? Or the letter Marilyn Monroe wrote to Brando that was found 50 years after her death? And unfortunately, they don't make men like Marlon Brando anymore.